The mining colony on 7B was not a beautiful place. The sky was always orange, and the wind carried dust that got into everything. But for the 200 humans who lived there, it was home. They had built their lives on this distant rock, digging precious metals from the ground and sending them to the stars. Wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stepped out of the mine shaft. He was 38 years old, with tired eyes and hands rough from years of hard work. His wife had died 3 years ago from a sickness the colony doctors could not cure. Now he lived for one thing only: his daughter. She was 12 years old, with her mother's smile and her father's stubborn spirit. Every day after school, she would run to meet him at the mine entrance. Today was no different. He saw her small figure running across the dusty ground, her black hair flying behind her. "Father," she called out, waving her hand. Smiled. It was the only time he smiled these days. He caught her in his arms and lifted her up, even though she was getting too big for that now. "How was school?" he asked. "Boring," she said, making a face. "Teacher made us study language again. Why do we need to learn their clicking sounds?" Put her down and took her hand as they walked toward their small housing unit. "Because they control this sector," he said quietly, "and we must be polite to our partners." There were insect-like creatures, tall and thin, with hard shells covering their bodies. They had ruled this part of space for 1,000 years. Humans were newcomers here, allowed to mine only because they paid heavy taxes to the Dominion. The relationship was cold but peaceful. They saw humans as useful workers, nothing more. That peace was about to end. The next morning, a large ship landed at the colony's main platform. From it stepped a creature that made even the other nervous. Commander was taller than most of his kind, with a dark purple shell and eyes that showed no warmth. He carried himself like someone who had never been told no. He called all the human workers to the central square, stood with his fellow miners, a bad feeling growing in his stomach. "Humans," announced, his voice coming through a translator device. "Production must increase. The Dominion requires 300% more output. You will work longer shifts. You will meet these targets." A murmur went through the crowd. Friend, an older miner, stepped forward. "Commander, that is impossible. We already work 12-hour shifts. Our equipment cannot handle more strain. And we have families, children who need." "Your personal concerns are irrelevant," cut him off. "You will comply or there will be consequences." The workers refused, not with violence or angry words, but simply by continuing their normal schedule. They could not do the impossible, and they would not kill themselves trying. Watch them for 3 days. On the 4th day he acted. Was in school when the soldiers came. She was sitting next to her friend, a 10-year-old boy whose father was the colony doctor. Behind them sat a small girl of 9 who was known for remembering everything she ever saw or heard. The classroom door burst open. 4 soldiers marched in, their weapons raised. Teacher stood up, his face turning pale. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "By order of Commander," one soldier announced, "all juvenile humans are to be relocated. This is a compliance measure." The children screamed. Some tried to run, but the soldiers were fast and strong. They grabbed the children one by one, carrying them out of the school despite their kicks and cries. Fought hard, biting a soldier's arm, but his shell was too tough. Tried to protect the younger ones, placing himself between them and the soldiers. Stayed quiet, her eyes moving everywhere, counting soldiers, nodding exits, memorizing everything. 17 children were taken that day. They were loaded onto a transport ship and flown to an orbital station high above the planet. When heard the news, something broke inside him. He ran to the landing platform, but the ship was already gone, just a small light disappearing into the orange sky. He fell to his knees, a sound coming from his throat that was not quite human. Around him, other parents were screaming, crying, holding each other. Some tried to attack the remaining soldiers and were knocked down. held back a mother who was trying to claw at a soldier's face. Commander watched from a safe distance, his insect eyes showing nothing. He did not understand why these humans were reacting so strongly. Children were simply young organisms. They could be replaced. This was merely a negotiation tactic. He would learn how wrong he was. That night sat in the colony's communication center with the chief engineer, a woman named. Her own son was among the taken. Her hands shook as she worked the controls, but her voice was steady. "I am boosting the signal to maximum power," she said. "It will reach the nearest human fleet outpost in approximately 6 hours." Leaned into the microphone. He did not know what words to use. How could he explain what had happened? How could he make someone light years away understand the pain that was tearing his chest apart? He spoke simply. "This is 7B mining colony. Forces have taken our children. 17 human children are being held prisoner on an orbital station. They are ages 6 to 14. They are scared. They are alone. Please, anyone who hears this, we need help. We need help now." He repeated the message 3 times, then added the coordinates of the station where the children were being held. Then he sat back and stared at the stars through the small window. Somewhere up there, his daughter was waiting for him. He had promised to always protect her. He had failed. But he knew one thing about his species that they did not understand. Humans did not leave their children behind. Humans did not forget. Humans did not forgive those who hurt their young. The message flew through space at the speed of light, bouncing off relay stations, passing through communication networks, spreading further and further into the galaxy. And somewhere on a ship called a woman with hair and hard eyes received the transmission. Admiral listened to it once, then again, then a third time. Her hands gripped the armrests of her command chair until her knuckles turned white. "Lieutenant Minu," she said quietly, "set a course for 7B, maximum speed." "Yes, Admiral, should I notify command?" Stood up, her eyes cold as ice. "Notify everyone." Message from 7B spread like fire through dry grass. It jumped from ship to ship, station to station, planet to planet. Within 12 hours, every human settlement in 3 sectors had heard the news. Within 24 hours, it reached Earth. Admiral stood on the bridge of watching her crew work with silent intensity. She had served in the human fleet for 30 years. She had seen battles, negotiations, and difficult situations of every kind, but she had never felt the cold anger that filled her now. Lieutenant Minu approached her carefully. He was young, only 26, and he had never seen his admiral look like this before. "Admiral, we are receiving communications from other vessels. Many other vessels." "How many?" Minu checked his screen and his eyes widened. 43 military ships are changing course to join us, and he paused, not believing what he was reading. Over 2,000 civilian vessels have announced they are heading to space. Raised an eyebrow. Civilian vessels. Cargo ships, passenger transports, private yachts, mining vessels. Their pilots are volunteers. They say they want to help. In her 30 years of service, had never seen anything like it. Ordinary people with ordinary ships were dropping everything to travel across the galaxy. Some of them did not even have weapons. They simply wanted to be there. This was what they did not understand about humans. Meanwhile, on the orbital detention station, the 17 children sat in cold cells. The rooms were clean but empty, with hard metal beds and bright lights that never turned off. Soldiers stood guard at every door. Sat against the wall of her cell, her knees pulled up to her chest. She was scared, more scared than she had ever been in her life, but she would not let the aliens see it. She remembered her father's words from when she was small. "When you are afraid, act brave. Sometimes the acting becomes real." She could hear crying in the next cell. The little girl had been so quiet and strong during the capture, but now the tears came, pressed her hand against the wall that separated them. She called softly, Can you hear me?" The crying stopped. "Yes," came a small voice. "I need you to do something for me. I need you to count." "Count what?" "Everything. How many guards pass your door? How long between each patrol? How many steps from your cell to the end of the hallway? Can you do that?" There was silence for a moment, then his voice came back a little stronger. "Yes, I can do that." In another cell was already doing the same thing. He had positioned himself near the small window in his door, watching every movement outside. He was only 10, but his father had taught him to observe carefully. "A doctor must see everything," his father always said. Was not a doctor, but he could see. He noticed that the guards changed every 4 hours. He noticed that one guard, a younger with a lighter-colored shell, seemed uncomfortable. This guard did not look at the children with the same cold eyes as the others. There was something like doubt in his movements. Filed this information away. It might be useful later. Back on the Admiral received a communication from Ambassador. The ambassador's face appeared on the screen, her expression controlled but tense. "Admiral, I am calling an emergency session of the Galactic Council. We have enough support from other species to invoke Article 7 of the Sapient Rights Charter." "Will it help?" asked. Paused. "It will make our position clear to the galaxy. Whether they listen is another matter." "Then make them listen. I am giving you 6 days. If those children are not returned by then, I will handle this my way." Nodded slowly, she understood. They all understood. The Galactic Council met on a massive space station at the center of the galaxy. Representatives from over 100 species gathered in a great circular chamber, their forms ranging from small furry creatures to massive beings of living crystal. Floating translation devices filled the air, converting thousands of languages into understandable speech. Ambassador walked to the center platform. She was a small woman, 50 years old, with hair tied back in a simple style. She did not look impressive, but when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 8 billion humans on Earth and billions more scattered across the stars. 17 children, she began. Not soldiers, not criminals, not threats of any kind. Children. The youngest is 6 years old, the oldest is 14. They were taken from their school by armed soldiers and imprisoned on an orbital station. Their crime: their parents refused to work themselves to death. The ambassador, a tall creature named, stood up. His translator clicked and buzzed. "The juvenile humans are being held as a temporary compliance measure. They are not harmed. They are provided with adequate nutrition and shelter. We fail to understand this excessive reaction." A murmur went through the chamber. Many species were confused. A hive mind species that shared consciousness between all members did not understand individual attachment to offspring. A race that laid thousands of eggs and expected most to die found the small number of children insignificant. But not all species were confused. The ambassador rose slowly. There were ancient beings living for thousands of years. They reproduced rarely, sometimes only once in a century. Each child was precious beyond measure to them. "Ambassador," they said, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber, "help us understand. What do children mean to your species?" Was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, and her words would be remembered for generations. When a human child is born, something changes in the parents. A connection forms that is stronger than any force in the universe, stronger than fear, stronger than death itself. We do not raise children because we must. We raise them because they are the meaning of our lives. She turned to face the ambassador directly. "You see children as small humans who will become big humans. We see them as the reason we exist. Every song we sing, every building we build, every war we fight is for them. When you took those children, you did not take hostages. You took our hearts, our souls, our future." She paused, letting her words sink in. "There is no negotiation for this. There is no price we will not pay. There is no enemy we will not fight. You have awakened something that your species has never faced. I advise you to return our children immediately. Because if you do not, every human in the galaxy will come for them, and we will not stop until we have them back." The chamber was silent. The ambassador made a clicking sound, his version of a dismissive laugh. "You exaggerate. You are a young species. You do not have the resources to threaten the Dominion." At that moment, a Galactic Council aide hurried to the ambassador and showed him a data screen. Looked at it, and for the first time his posture changed. The screen showed the edge of space. Thousands of ships were gathering. Military vessels flew beside cargo freighters. Passenger ships traveled next to mining barges. More were arriving every hour. "Those are not military ships," said, confusion in his voice. "Those are civilian transports. Why would civilians fly to a potential battle zone?" Smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because to humans there is no such thing as someone else's child. Every child is our child, and we protect our own." The Galactic Council session continued for 3 more hours, but the mood in the chamber had changed completely. What began as a simple complaint had become something much larger. Species that rarely spoke to each other were now talking in urgent whispers. Something was happening and everyone could feel it. The ambassador requested permission to speak again. He was one of the oldest beings in the chamber, nearly 4,000 years old. His body was covered in thick scales, and his eyes held the wisdom of centuries. When he spoke, others listened. "I have a question for the human ambassador," he said slowly. "Among my people, the protective instinct for young is strong when they are small, but as they grow, we expect them to become independent. We let go. Is it the same for humans?" Ambassador shook her head. "No, our bond does not fade with time. A human parent will protect their child even when that child is fully grown. We have records of elderly parents, 80 or 90 years old, fighting to protect their adult children. Grandparents will sacrifice their lives for. Great-grandparents have done the same." A sound of surprise rippled through the chamber. The ambassador sat back, clearly impressed. "Your species carries this love across generations." "We carry it forever," said simply. On the other side of the chamber, the ambassador was watching with knowing eyes. They were a warrior species, famous for their strength and their love of battle. They had fought humans once, nearly 200 years ago. It had been the worst mistake in history. The ambassador was named. He was massive, covered in red scales and scars from 100 battles. He stood up, his heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber. "I will tell you all a story," he rumbled. 2 centuries ago, my people attacked a human colony. We thought they would be easy prey. Young species, soft bodies, limited numbers. We were wrong." He paused, looking around the chamber to make sure everyone was listening. "The humans did not fight like any species we had faced before. They did not retreat when they were outnumbered. They did not surrender when they were wounded. They attacked our medical ships, something no honorable species does, until we realized those ships had accidentally captured human children during a raid." His eyes met the ambassador's. "We killed 10,000 of their warriors. They killed 15,000 of ours, but they would not stop. They lost battle after battle, but they kept coming. More ships, more soldiers. Farmers who had never held a weapon took up arms. Scientists built bombs. Artists became assassins. Their entire civilization became a single weapon pointed at us." He let out a heavy breath. "We had to give back the children and pay reparations to end the war. Not because we were weak, because we realized that they would have fought until every last human was dead rather than abandon those young ones. There was no victory possible against such an enemy." He turned to face the ambassador. "You have made the same mistake we made. I advise you to fix it quickly, because if you do not, you will learn the same lesson we learned, and the lesson is painful." The chamber fell silent again. On the detention station, the children had been prisoners for 4 days. They were tired and scared, but they had not given up. Every night, when the lights dimmed slightly for sleep hours, they whispered through the walls to each other. Had organized everything. She was the oldest and the others looked to her for leadership. She gave everyone a job, counted and remembered, observed and reported. A boy named who was good at making friends tried to talk to the guards whenever he could. A girl named who was small enough to fit in tight spaces tested every vent cover and loose panel she could find. They could not escape yet, but they were preparing. One night, the young guard with the light-colored shell stopped its cell. He looked around nervously, then spoke in his clicking language. The translation device made his words understandable. "Why do your adults react so strongly to your capture?" he asked. "You are young. You will grow. Why do they act as if you are already dead?" Looked at him carefully. He remembered his father's words, "Understand before you judge." "What is your name?" asked. The guard hesitated. "Do you have children?" Another hesitation. "I have a brood clutch, 5 eggs waiting to hatch." Nodded slowly. "When they hatch, will you love them?" That is not a word we use often, but I will provide for them, protect them, teach them." "And if someone took them, put them in cells like this, how would you feel?" Was quiet for a long moment. His insect eyes, usually so unreadable, showed something that looked like understanding. I would be very distressed." "Now imagine that feeling by 1,000, said. "That is how our parents feel. That is how all humans feel. You did not take prisoners. You took pieces of their souls." Stepped back from the door. He did not speak again that night, but something had changed in his eyes. The High Council was meeting in emergency session. They had received reports from the border. The number of human ships had grown to over 3,000. More were arriving every hour. Intelligence agents had discovered something even more alarming. Humans from sectors that were supposed to be neutral had left their jobs, their homes, their entire lives to join the fleet. A military strategist presented his analysis to the council. "The humans are not behaving rationally," he said. "Our models predicted that they would protest through diplomatic channels and eventually accept compensation for the children. Instead, they are mobilizing for total war. Their military vessels are outnumbered by civilian ships, which should not even be in a combat zone." "What is your recommendation?" the High Council leader asked. The strategist's translator clicked nervously. "My recommendation is to release the children immediately. Our analysis of human history suggests that they will accept nothing less. They have a phrase, Mama Bear. It refers to a protective parent who becomes extremely dangerous when offspring are threatened. The phrase appears in their military training manuals. They train their soldiers to fight like protective parents." But Commander, who had traveled from 7B to defend his actions, stood up angrily. "This is weakness. We cannot surrender to a young species with inferior technology. The Dominion has ruled this sector for 1,000 years. We do not bow to anyone." "Commander," the strategist said carefully, "they ruled their sector for 2,000 years before they fought humans. Now they are our allies against the humans. They advise us strongly to release the children. They are warriors who respect strength. We should show strength." The council leader raised a limb for silence. "We will wait and see how the situation develops. Perhaps the humans will become reasonable when they understand the forces against them." It was a decision they would regret. Admiral stood on her bridge, watching the fleet grow larger every hour. Her officers had stopped counting the ships. There were too many. Freighter captains flew beside retired generals. Young people who had never been in space before piloted their family vessels alongside veterans of a dozen battles. A message came in from a small transport ship. An old woman's face appeared on the screen. She was at least 80 years old, with white hair and wrinkled skin. "Admiral," the old woman said, I am a retired schoolteacher from Earth. I have no weapons, I have no training. But those are children up there. I raised children my whole life. I will not sit at home while children are in cages. Felt something tighten in her chest. Welcome to the fleet, she said softly. The old woman smiled and ended the communication. Looked at Lieutenant Minu. How much longer until we reach the border? 18 hours, Admiral. And the deadline I gave them. 6 days remain. Nodded. 6 days. Then the galaxy would learn what happened when you took human children. The human fleet arrived at the border of space like a wave of stars. 47 military vessels formed the center, their weapons ready, their shields charged. Around them, spreading out for thousands of kilometers, were the civilian ships. Over 3,000 of them now, with more arriving every hour. Admiral looked at the formation on her command screen. In her 30 years of service, she had never seen anything like it. Cargo ships with no weapons flew beside battle cruisers. A luxury passenger liner that usually carried tourists was now filled with volunteer medics. Mining vessels had been fitted with emergency modifications, turning their drilling lasers into crude but effective weapons. Open a channel to command, ordered. Channel open, Admiral. She spoke clearly, her voice broadcasting across all frequencies. This is Admiral of the United Nations Space Force. You are holding 17 human children prisoner. You will return them unharmed within 6 standard hours. There will be no negotiation. There will be no second message. She closed the channel. Lieutenant Minu looked at her nervously. Admiral, their fleet is larger than ours, if they decide to fight. They will not, said calmly. How can you be sure? Because if they fight, they will win the battle and lose everything else. Every human in the galaxy will never rest until they are destroyed. They may kill us here today, but there are billions more humans, and we remember. We always remember. On the detention station, the children felt the change in the air. More guards were running through the hallways. Orders were being shouted in the clicking language. Something big was happening. Gathered everyone's reports through whispered conversations. Had counted the guard rotations perfectly. Had noticed that the guards were distracted and nervous. Had learned from a careless guard that human ships had arrived at the border. Had found a vent cover that was loose enough to remove. Tonight, whispered to the others, when the lights dim for sleep hours, we make our move. But first, she had one more thing to do. The young guard was making his rounds. He stopped at cell, as he had been doing more often lately. There was confusion in his body language, uncertainty in his movements. Your ships have come, he said quietly. I know. My commanders say they will destroy them all. Shook her head. No, they will try, but they will fail, because those ships are not just soldiers. Those are our families, our neighbors, our friends. Every human who could find a ship came here for us. Was silent for a moment. I do not understand your species. Then let me explain, said softly. When I was small, I was very sick. The medicine I needed was on a planet 3 days away. My father did not have money for fast transport, so he worked for 60 hours straight without sleeping, taking any job he could find until he had enough money. Then he flew to that planet himself in a tiny ship with a broken heater. He almost froze to death, but he got the medicine. He saved me. She looked directly into insect eyes. That is what humans do for their children. My father is down there on that colony right now. I know he has not slept since I was taken. I know he is planning something. And I know that nothing in this universe will stop him from getting me back. Looked at her for a long moment, then slowly he nodded. I think I am beginning to understand. In the command center, Commander was raging at his officers. They are bluffing. They would not sacrifice thousands of lives for 17 juveniles. His second-in-command, a veteran soldier named, spoke carefully. Commander, our intelligence reports say otherwise. We have intercepted communications from their fleet. Crew members are writing final messages to their families. They are preparing to die. Then they are fools. No, Commander, they are parents. Translator made a harsh sound. What is that supposed to mean? Stepped closer, lowering his voice. I have studied human history. When their children are threatened, they become something else. Ordinary humans have lifted objects 10 times their weight to save children. Humans with no combat training have fought off dangerous predators with their bare hands. Their chemical responses override all logic, all self-preservation. They become killing machines focused on a single purpose. He pointed at the screen showing the human fleet. Those ships are filled with killing machines, all of them. The teachers, the farmers, the artists. Every single one is ready to die for those children. And if we kill them, more will come, and more, until there are no more humans or no more. Said nothing. On the human fleet, sat in a small cargo ship that had joined the formation. He had left 7B the moment the colony ship could be spared. Next to him sat his old friend from the mines, and the engineer whose son was also among the prisoners. They have not responded to the Admiral's message, said, checking her communication screen. They will, said quietly. How do you know? Because they are looking at us right now. 3,000 ships. They are wondering why we are here. They are trying to understand what would make ordinary people fly across the galaxy into a battle zone. He looked out the window at the stars. And when they understand, they will be afraid. The 6-hour deadline passed. Admiral did not wait for a response. She gave a single order. All ships advance. The human fleet crossed the border into space. It was an act of war. It was also an act of love. Ships moved to intercept them, but something strange happened. As the human fleet approached, the vessels began to pull back. One by one, they moved aside, opening a path toward the detention station. The crews had seen the reports. They had heard the stories. They knew what they were facing, and they were not willing to die for Commander's pride. On the detention station, alarms began to sound. Guards ran in all directions. In the confusion, no one noticed when quietly unlocked the doors to all 17 cells. Stepped out first, she looked at with surprise. Why, she asked. Because I have eggs waiting to hatch, he said, and I hope that if they were ever in danger, someone would help them too. He handed her a small communication device. Your ships are coming. Go to the main airlock. I will make sure the way is clear. Wanted to say thank you, but there was no time. She gathered the other children quickly. They moved through the station in a group, with guiding them based on the patrol patterns he had memorized. Counted their steps, making sure they were on the right path. Kept the younger children calm with quiet jokes and encouraging words. Behind them, confronted other guards who tried to stop the children. He told them the station was being evacuated, that the children were being moved to a safer location. Some guards believed him. Others did not, but was ready for that. He was not a fighter, but he was willing to fight for the first time in his life. The children reached the main airlock just as the first human ship docked. The doors opened and stood there, his eyes wild, his face covered in tears. He screamed. She ran to him. He caught her, lifted her, held her so tightly she could barely breathe. But she did not want him to let go. She never wanted him to let go. Around them, other parents found their children. Fell to her knees, sobbing, as she hugged her son. Picked up 2 children whose parents were not there yet, promising to keep them safe until their families arrived. On the bridge of the Admiral received the message. All 17 children recovered, all unharmed. She closed her eyes and let out a breath she had been holding for days. All ships hold position. We are not done yet. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. 17 human children, rescued from a detention station by a fleet of over 3,000 ships. The images were everywhere. Parents holding their children, tears streaming down faces, soldiers and civilians embracing strangers with joy. But Admiral was not finished. Her fleet remained in space, surrounding the detention station. She sent a message to the High Council with 3 demands. First, Commander must be arrested and punished for his actions. Second, the Dominion must issue a formal apology to the humans of 7B. Third, the Dominion must pay reparations to every family whose child was taken. The High Council agreed to all 3 demands within 1 hour. Commander was arrested by his own soldiers as he tried to flee the command center. He screamed about honor and dignity, but no one listened. The soldiers who captured him were the same ones who had refused to fight the human fleet. They had seen the truth in those 3,000 ships. There was no victory possible against an enemy that loved this deeply. Was sentenced to exile on a barren moon at the edge of space. He would live out his days alone, with nothing but his pride to keep him company. It was a fitting punishment for someone who never understood the value of family. On the Galactic Council, Ambassador presented a new amendment to the Sapient Rights Charter. The amendment stated that no species could ever use the offspring of another species as political leverage or hostages. Any species that violated this rule would face immediate sanctions from the entire Galactic Union. The vote was nearly unanimous. Only 2 species voted against. Both were races with similar beliefs to the. They quickly changed their votes when they saw the looks from other ambassadors, especially the humans. The ambassador approached after the vote. "You handled this well," said, his deep voice respectful. "We had no choice," replied. "Those were children." Nodded his massive head. "That is why we voted in favor. We understand. We remember." He paused, then added something that surprised her. "Welcome to the club." "What club?" "The club of species that other species fear, not because of our weapons, not because of our numbers, but because of what we will do for our young." Thought about that for a moment, then smiled slightly. "I think I prefer it this way." On the cargo ship heading back to 7B sat within his arms. She was asleep, exhausted from the ordeal. He watched her face, memorizing every feature, thanking every star in the sky that she was safe. Sat nearby, her son asleep against her shoulder. The other parents were scattered through the ship, each holding their children close. No one wanted to let go, not yet, maybe not ever. Came and sat next to. "You know, I never thought I would fly across the galaxy in a mining ship," the old man said. Laughed softly, careful not to wake. "I never thought I would be rescued by 3,000 volunteers." That is the thing about humans, we surprise each other. They were quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars. "What do you think will happen now?" asked. "I think the galaxy will remember this. I think species will think twice before they hurt our children, and I think we will go back to 7B and rebuild our lives." And the considered this. His first instinct was anger, hatred, but then he thought about the young guard who had opened the cells, who had a brood clutch of his own waiting to hatch, who had risked everything to do the right thing. "Some of them are not so different from us," said finally. "Maybe we can learn to live together." Had been granted asylum by the human fleet. He was on another ship now, being questioned by diplomats and officers, but he would not be punished. Admiral had promised that much. He had saved children, and that made him a hero to humans, regardless of his species. 1 year later, 7B was a different place. The mining operation continued, but under new agreements that respected human safety and family needs. New housing had been built, better schools had been opened, and the colony was growing. Stood at the entrance of a brand new building, a school for both human and children. It had been her idea, proposed during a community meeting. Many adults had been skeptical but had convinced them. "If we keep our children separate," she had said, "they will grow up afraid of each other. If we teach them together, they will grow up understanding each other. Is that not better?" The building was about to open for its first day. Was now 13, and she had been asked to give the opening speech. She was nervous, but her father was in the crowd, smiling at her. That gave her strength. Standing next to her he had become a teacher, using his knowledge of culture to help human children understand their neighbors. He had also become her friend. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I think so." She stepped forward and looked at the crowd. Humans and together, parents and children, all waiting to hear what she had to say. "1 year ago," "I was taken from this colony and put in a prison. I was scared. I was angry. I thought all were my enemies." She paused, looking at. "I was wrong, saved me and the other children." He risked his life because he understood something important. Children are precious to everyone. Children, human children, all children. She turned to face the young ones in the crowd, both human and. "We are building something new here, a place where we learn together, where we play together, where we become friends. It will not always be easy. We are different. We speak different languages and have different bodies, but we also have something in common." She smiled. "We are all someone's children, and that makes us family." The crowd was silent for a moment, then started clapping, joined him, added his hands to the sound, and then everyone was clapping, humans and together, a sound of hope and new beginnings. Far away, on Earth, Ambassador watched a recording of the speech. She smiled and made a note to add it to the official records of the Galactic Council. Future generations would study this moment. They would learn about the time a young species called humanity taught the galaxy a lesson about love, and how a 12-year-old girl helped build peace from the ashes of conflict. On the edge of space, where the old ambassador lived in retirement, watched the same recording. He nodded his massive head in approval. "Yes," he said to no one in particular, "they understand. They are one of us now." And in a small housing unit on 7B, tucked into bed just as he had done when she was small. She was getting too old for this, she always said. But tonight she did not complain. "Father," she said sleepily. "Yes, my daughter. Do you think things will be okay now?" He bent down and kissed her forehead. "I think so, because we have each other, and that is all we ever need." She smiled, closed her eyes, and fell asleep. Outside, the orange sky of 7B faded into night, filled with stars. Each star was a sun, each sun had planets, and on some of those planets, parents were putting their children to bed, just like this. Different species, different worlds, but the same love. That was the lesson the galaxy had learned, and it would never forget.